Welcome back to our deep dive into synchronicity. We've talked about synchronicity and quantum physics, synchronicity and self-organizing systems, even synchronicity and brainwave synchronization. But this time, we're going to explore synchronicity and time.
It's very interesting.
Yeah, so let's unpack this a little bit. We think of time as this very rigid progression from past to present to future, but could it be more fluid than that? And how does that relate to synchronicity?
Well, I think a better analogy for time than a straight line is a tree, with branches representing possibilities, and then synchronicity occurs when we shift from one branch to another, often in alignment with our desires.
So it's not just that these events happen randomly, but that somehow we are drawn to those branches of time where those events are more likely to occur. Is that right?
Exactly, and that's where Jung's concept of the collective unconscious comes into play. He suggested that we are all interconnected on a deeper level.
So are you saying that if we're all connected in this way, that could influence the unfolding of events in time?
It's a compelling idea, like those aha moments, those flashes of insight that come out of nowhere. What if they're glimpses into that collective unconscious that are both timeless and timely?
Now that is pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Okay, but how does this connect to the idea of synchronicity happening at specific moments in time?
Well, Jung believed that synchronicities occur when there's a meaningful connection between an inner psychic event, like a thought or a dream, and an outer event in the physical world. And it's often the timing of these events that makes them so significant.
Can you give me an example of that?
Imagine you're struggling with a difficult decision and you keep seeing the same number sequence everywhere you go. Then you have a dream that offers a solution. And the next day, you receive unexpected news that clarifies your path. The timing can feel like more than just coincidence.
It's like the universe is trying to communicate with us through these synchronicities, but the message is often hidden in the timing itself.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's really interesting to consider how different cultures perceive time and its relationship to synchronicity. For example, in Western cultures, we tend to view time as linear and objective, whereas in many Eastern philosophies, there's this concept of cyclical time.
So instead of a straight line, they see time more as a circle constantly repeating.
Yeah, it's more like a spiral. The idea is that history repeats itself, but not in an identical way. Each cycle kind of builds upon the previous one, evolving and transforming.
That makes sense. So in those cultures, how is synchronicity viewed within that cyclical framework?
Synchronicities are often seen as signposts along the spiral of time, kind of indicators that we're aligned with a particular path. They're seen as moments where the veil between the physical and the spiritual world thins, allowing for deeper understanding.
Oh, wow. So those cultures might interpret synchronicity as like messages from the universe or from guides on our journey through these repeating cycles.
Precisely. And they might also place a greater emphasis on fate or destiny, suggesting that certain events are preordained to occur.
And that's a pretty different perspective from the Western view of free will and the ability to shape our own future. I'm curious, though, how do we reconcile these seemingly opposing viewpoints?
Well, it's an interesting question. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between. Maybe we have free will within the parameters of these larger cycles, and synchronicities could be seen as reminders of this interconnectedness.
So it's not about being controlled by fate, but understanding those patterns of time and using that knowledge to make more conscious choices.
Exactly. And that's where the concept of flow states becomes really interesting. Remember those moments where you're completely immersed in what you're doing, time seems to disappear, and everything just clicks into place?
Yeah, like when I'm writing and I just lose all track of time,
Yeah.
I'm in the zone.
Those flow states can be seen as points of alignment with those larger cycles of time. And when we're in flow, we're tapping into a deeper level of awareness, and that might increase our receptivity to synchronicities.
So it's almost like flow states are acting as bridges between our individual consciousness and that collective unconscious.
It's a very intriguing possibility, and it suggests that cultivating these flow states might actually enhance our ability to experience synchronicities and navigate time.
Wow. So if we want to understand and harness that power of synchronicity, we need to explore not just the nature of time itself, but also our role in shaping our experience of time.
Exactly. It's this interplay between our inner world and the outer world, between our choices and the unfolding of events in time.
I'm starting to see how this all ties together, but I have to ask, if synchronicities are often tied to very specific moments in time, how do we know when to pay attention? Are there clues or signals that we can look out for?
That's a great question, and it's one we'll dive deeper into in the next part of our deep dive. We'll explore some specific examples of synchronicities and the different ways they manifest in our lives.
All right, that sounds fascinating. I'm excited to hear more. But before we move on, I want to give everyone listening a chance to digest all of this. This is a lot to take in.
Yes, it is. It's important to reflect and let these ideas settle in. See if you can notice any synchronicities in your own life and how they might relate to your own experience of time.
We'll be back soon with more mind-bending explorations into synchronicity. Until then, keep your eyes open for those meaningful coincidences and the messages they might be conveying.
Absolutely. You asked about those clues or signals that might point to synchronicities. Well, one way to think about it is to consider the concept of anticipated qualitative experience.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you mentioned that earlier.
I did. It's the idea that we don't just desire outcomes, but we anticipate the feeling, the experience of those outcomes. And that anticipated feeling might influence the events leading up to the outcome.
Okay, yeah. Now it's coming back to me.
Yeah.
So how does that relate to recognizing synchronicities?
Well, imagine you're working towards a goal, let's say launching a new business. You're not just visualizing the successful launch, but you're feeling the excitement, the accomplishment, the relief,
Yeah.
maybe even a bit of healthy nervousness.
Yeah, I can relate to that. It's like you're living it in your mind.
Precisely. And as you hold that anticipated feeling, you might start noticing those synchronicities pop up. You might overhear a conversation that sparks an idea or run into someone who has experience in the exact area you need.
Yeah, it's like the universe is responding to those feelings, those vibrations you're putting out there.
And those synchronicities aren't just random events, they often carry a symbolic meaning.
Okay, can you give an example of that? Like a symbolic synchronicity?
Imagine you're feeling lost and uncertain about a career change, and you find a lost key on your walk home. That key could be seen as a symbol of unlocking a new opportunity.
Wow. So it's not just noticing the event, but paying attention to that underlying symbolism, that message they might be conveying.
Absolutely. And those messages aren't always positive. Sometimes synchronicities are warnings, red flags.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So how can you tell the difference between a positive synchronicity and a warning?
It often comes down to intuition and how the synchronicity makes you feel.
So tune in to your gut feeling, that inner knowing. I'm curious, though. If time isn't as rigid as we think, does that mean we can influence the timing of events through our thoughts and actions?
That is a very fascinating question. It leads us into quantum physics, which suggests that reality is much more fluid and interconnected than we thought. At the subatomic level, particles can exist in multiple states simultaneously.
It's like that Schrodinger's cat thought experiment. The cat's both alive and dead until we observe it.
Exactly. And the act of observation, of focusing our attention, may collapse those possibilities into a single reality.
Okay, so you're saying that our thoughts and intentions could actually influence how events unfold in time.
It's mind-blowing, but there's evidence to suggest it. Some studies have shown that intention can influence things, from the growth of plants to the outcome of random number generators.
So if we combine that with that idea of anticipated qualitative experience, it's like we're not just watching time, but actively shaping our own timelines.
By aligning our thoughts, feelings, and actions, we might be weighting the branches of time.
I'm starting to see the bigger picture here. It's also a bit daunting, though.
Right.
If our choices have this much power, how do we know we're making the right ones?
It's not about controlling every aspect or predicting the future. It's about trusting our intuition, recognizing synchronicities, and making choices aligned with our highest values.
So it's a balance between taking action and kind of surrendering to the flow, trusting that the universe has our back even when things don't go according to plan.
Exactly. The wrong turns can lead to unexpected opportunities.
I'm starting to see that the more we learn about synchronicity, the more we uncover about ourselves and the universe. But there's still so much to learn. I can't wait to hear what else you have to share about harnessing that power in our daily lives.
Well, before we get into that, there's one more aspect of synchronicity and time that I want to explore. It's the idea that time might not just be a linear thing or even a cycle, but a multidimensional web.
Okay, now you're really pushing the boundaries of my understanding here. What do you mean by a multidimensional web?
Imagine each choice, each action, creating a ripple effect, extending outward not just in our own timeline, but in others. Our lives intersecting in ways we may not fully comprehend.
So it's like we're connected through this invisible web, and our actions are creating this kind of chain reaction.
And synchronicities are like points of convergence, where these interconnected timelines intersect.
That is really mind-blowing. It's a lot to process. I have to admit, it is a bit
It
overwhelming.
is vast and mysterious, but we don't need to grasp every intricacy to experience the magic of synchronicity.
So how do we tune into that web? Is there a process or framework?
That leads us into the practical realm of using synchronicity to enhance our lives. In the last part of our deep dive, we'll explore some tools for cultivating awareness, intentionality, and receptivity to synchronicities.
Okay, that sounds really helpful. I'm definitely ready to learn how we can put these ideas into practice. But first, let's give our listeners a moment to think about this idea of time as a multidimensional web. It changes how we see the world.
Take a moment to consider how your choices might be influencing the lives of others. As we continue, we'll uncover even more about the interplay of synchronicity, time, and interconnectedness.
Okay, we've covered so much ground in this deep dive. It's amazing to think about Jung's ideas, quantum physics, and how it all suggests this intelligence that's orchestrating events, in ways we can't even imagine.
Yeah, it definitely makes you feel small, right? Realizing we're not just these individuals moving through time, but we're part of this huge web of experience.
And it seems like if we could tap into that web, recognize those patterns and those synchronicities, we could unlock a whole new level of understanding in our lives.
Absolutely. And that's where things get really practical. It's not enough just to understand it all in our heads. We need to live it, make it part of our lives.
So how do we do that? Are there things we can do to, cultivate that awareness of synchronicity and use its power?
Well, there are many ways, but I think a good place to start is by changing how we see time. Instead of seeing it as this straight line, always moving forward, try to see it more like a dance, something more fluid with lots of possibilities.
You mean like being more in the present moment, not dwelling on the past or worrying about the future?
Exactly. When we're present, we're more tuned in to those subtle cues, those synchronicities that are always happening around us. It's like adjusting our frequency, becoming more receptive.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But how do we actually do that? It's easy to say, be present, but it's not always easy to do in our busy lives.
I agree. It takes practice. A simple technique is mindfulness meditation. Even a few minutes of focused breathing can help.
Yeah, I found meditation really helpful for stress and finding some peace. Are there other things that can help us be more aware of synchronicity?
For sure. Journaling can be powerful. Write down your thoughts, your dreams, even the synchronicities you notice. You might start to see patterns.
Like creating a map of our journey through time, highlighting those key moments.
And as you become more aware of those patterns, you can use them to make decisions, navigate life with more purpose.
It's like we're working with the universe to make things happen.
Right, but remember, it's a lifelong journey. You'll feel connected to that flow sometimes, and other times you might feel lost.
It's okay to feel unsure. It's all part of it.
Embrace the challenges. Even when things feel chaotic, trust that the universe is guiding you, supporting you.
That's reassuring to hear. It's so easy to try and control things, from our limited view.
But when we surrender to that flow, we open ourselves up to all sorts of amazing possibilities.
This has been such an incredible journey. I feel like I have a completely new understanding of synchronicity and how everything's connected.
I'm glad to hear that. As we wrap up, let's remember this. We're not alone. We're all connected by time and our experiences, and within that connection, there's this beautiful synchronicity guiding us towards something better.
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into synchronicity. We'll see you next time. Until then, keep exploring, keep trusting, and embrace the magic of synchronicity in your own life.
Follow Synchronicity Keys with Cecilia. For me, synchronicity isn't just a concept. It's the rhythm I walk, the breath I live. Now, let's delve into its hidden mechanics together, uncover the unseen forces at play, and align with the flow to co-create a reality shaped by synchronicity.